The latest tech.
I'm Alexa. I can answer your questions.
Interviews.
And we are evolving, and we are seeing an amazing opportunity that is happening.
Accessibility.
Accessibility is one of our core values. It's even a part of our mission statement.
This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome to another edition of Double Tap TV. We hope you're enjoying our season thus far. It has been a busy one, and although we have not been able to get out of the studio much, I sure do hope our programming is living up to your expectations. Now, that being said, please let us know what you think by email. It's feedback@ami.ca. You could follow us on Twitter and let us know there as well. It is @DoubleTapCanada, and use that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap, when you've got a question. And now we're on Instagram. It is @DoubleTap.online. Each week, it's as though we planned it. I am Mark Aflalo, and by my side is Stephen Scott. Stephen, how you doing this week?
Oh, I'm living up to the low expectations set to me by society, Mark. So I'm doing great because I'm in here in my little house enjoying myself, talking to you. It's great.
You feel trapped a little bit, stuck in your home, or are you looking forward to getting out a little bit as the weather gets better?
I've got no desire to leave the house. I am perfectly happy where I am. I want to sit here and play with gadgets. I want to talk about technology. That's it. Just leave me alone.
This week, we're talking about a topic that's pretty close to home. That's because I have two young kids, Stephen. One of the things you realize as a parent is that you can't shield your kids from all the bad things in the world, but you can do your darndest to try and control when they're exposed to various things. You know, that's the same for things that come up in conversations with their friends or even other adults. Now, in the case of this week's episode, we're talking about those kind of things, except online.
Yeah, well, I don't have this problem because I don't have children. I don't mean to consider children a problem, although, but look, in our house, we're both adults here, right? And to my knowledge, the dogs don't use the internet, so we should be okay. My question to you, though, is, should I care about internet security and privacy in that case?
I do appreciate you playing dumb for the context of the show. But yes, Stephen, of course, the answer is yes. Of course, we need to worry about privacy. And you know what? There's so many ways that our kids could get exposed to things that they shouldn't. In our house, we always talk about the dangers of chatting with people in games, for example. How much information is too much information to share and why. Never talk about your last name. Never talk about the address, what city you're in. You know, we explain it that there are bad people out there who just want to hurt kids. And sometimes they even pretend they're kids. So unless you've met someone face-to-face, or a friend of yours knows someone face-to-face, personally, then we don't engage and we're not allowed to talk to them. It's quite simple. That's the rule. Now, that's one way to combat it, but there's, other ways that are less in our control. Things like ads, suggested videos when they're watching stuff on YouTube, that quite honestly, even just the news, things like the horrors of COVID, for example, or the horrors of our world, war and things that happen in the world, and conversations, they can creep into conversations, they can creep into articles, and they can even creep into ads, and we can't always filter that stuff out. Or can we?
Well, we can through various restrictions, but again, I go back to my point, and I am dumbly asking that question to allow you to say all that, but the truth is, in our house, we don't actually worry about restrictions on anything because we are the only two adults here. I guess my biggest concern, thinking back to early days of using a computer, was downloading viruses. Going to our website, and then it would accidentally or deliberately download a virus to your machine. That was my big concern. Of course, that's all changed now, hasn't it? That today you have to be careful of the emails that you get, links that are sent to you, opening links on the internet, because who knows what might be there, and also making sure you avoid that adult content. Look, if adult content was accidentally going to pop up on my computer, I'm going to delete it from my history. I'm going to get it out of there because I don't want it in my history. I don't have to worry about kids walking in and seeing it. I don't have to worry about kids accessing it. So, I do think that's why I asked you that question up top. Is it as important for me as it is for you and your kids?
Definitely on the malware side of things, protecting, the physical data, definitely important. But these things have really kind of morphed into one another. In our home, I use a mix of a lot of things. Parental restrictions in iOS, which we're going to talk about in detail later on. Parental restrictions in Google, which controls search results, YouTube videos. And then there are physical devices. There's a device called Circle by Disney. This is one that I've used in the past, which actually lets you plug it into your network, classify things by age, so you can actually see devices. You could say, okay, this device belongs to my daughter, this device belongs to my son, and then as a result, I can create profiles based on their age of what they can and can't access. So it's a pretty cool device.
It can actually do that?
Yeah, no, it actually does because it uses DNS forwarding. So when you do any kind of search on the internet, it always goes through a DNS server. And normally people use Google or they use Cloudflare. That's where you'll see a 1.1.1.1 or an 8.8.8.8. That literally directs your internet traffic through a specific portal. So what Circle does is it goes in your network and it intercepts that traffic because it's plugged into your network. You use a companion app. It could see every single device on your network, either by IP address or MAC address. You can then choose exactly who it belongs to, and based on who it belongs to, you can control all the content. You can block certain sites, you can create schedules for access to the internet, you can allow, communication like FaceTime chats with certain people. It's pretty neat.
That is pretty amazing. But these services are also coming in through routers themselves, aren't they?
Stephen, it's like amazing opportunity here for a segue. Yes, absolutely. But let's take a quick break before we dive into that, because when we come back, we're going to talk to one of the foremost brands in home networking, Linksys, all about it. This is Double Tap TV. Get involved. Feedback at ami.ca, our email address, at Double Tap Canada on Twitter, and use that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap, and now on Instagram at doubletap.online. We'll be back in just a moment.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome back to the show. I am Mark Aflalo with Stephen Scott by my side. Our next guest, Stephen, is a senior product manager at Linksys, a company that's been pretty much at the backbone of our internet connectivity for decades, and hundreds of millions of users worldwide continue to rely on them for keeping us safe and connected. Matt Kiesler, thank you for joining us here again on Double Tap TV. Before we dive into the specifics of what's available in Linksys routers, can you fill us in on the approach needed when you consider features that ultimately block content for users?
Yeah, completely. And I think what we're looking at here is an entirely different way of managing online content moving forward. And a lot of this has been a big catalyst of individuals working from home and all their kids coming home and trying to study and go through that life cycle of being on a computer all day, but then try not to be on a computer at night. And what we're really recommending is when you're looking at solutions, you want to actually change your mindset of how you're trying to provide parental controls or security to your young children or to your family. And historically, this tends to be a reactive approach. Timmy's 14, starting to go online. I now need to control everything. And it creates this conflictive experience, right? And what we're encouraging is when the moment Timmy gets his first device as a child, parental controls are right there. Not that you're worried that said 3-year-old may be going online to doing things that they may not want to, but at the end of the day, this helps foster and grow that experience of being able to access what features or services or content is right for their age and being able to scale with that. So the short story long, I think the point is identifying a parental control solution that can help grow with your children, help provide an expansive environment while protecting and blocking large swaths of content. Because last time I checked, you can't control or block maybe every single website. I don't know every single website. I don't know every news website. So it becomes pretty challenging. So how do you control large groups of that, I think is key. And that's going to be a big catalyst of really deciding or helping direct what path you move forward with.
Sites like YouTube and Netflix, Matt, they've got parental controls built in. Is there a requirement or perhaps a secret handshake going on when it comes to developing online content that ensures that people classify their content accordingly so that we can control access to it?
A lot of it's content's content, just as you stated, right? And from what we're seeing is you're visiting YouTube, you're on YouTube and we can control you on the YouTube web content, but I'm not seeing that nitty gritty of what's going down that deep, dark path. And that's where it's really important to still leverage those proprietary parental control solutions that do exist in those types of platforms. But at the end of the day, you still want to look at that holistic approach of protecting your content across the network, because it's not just your tablet or your mobile device, it's also the IoT devices that are at risk, right? And you want to be able to protect those. And we've seen so many things around intrusions on baby cameras and those types of things. So it's that holistic approach of protecting your network.
So Matt, talking about the hardware side of things, what kind of controls are in place on that hardware that'll help us feel safe letting the family go online?
So what we offer with Linksys Shield is a subscription service that we provide with our Velop solution that does provide you the ability of blocking large groups of content. It does protect you from malicious websites. So that's a big aspect of making sure that if you happen to click that link and it takes you to something that you shouldn't be, it'll block you there. But then you do have your latest and greatest internet security, so WPA2 or WPA3, based off of which router and technology you're leveraging. You have your standard network firewalls that are put into place to help protect you across the network. And then, I mean, you want to take advantage of password elements as well, right? Those for all devices and all experiences are a critical part of potential intrusion.
Okay, so I have to ask this. How specific can we get with parental controls? Could I, for example, use them to block sites that may not fall into the adult category, in inverted commas, but that I may want to block my kids from accessing?
You can get as granular as you want. And a lot of people laugh, but we have an adult section in our parental controls, and everyone kind of chuckled when we put that in. But there's not only use cases in a work environment where it makes sense, but also in a personal family environment, just as you alluded to. You can adjust and provide parental controls for those categories. But let's say I want access to all news but WebMD. You can block that specific website and get that granular. So that's the benefit of parental controls. And what you really need to look at is that scalable option, because no one uses the internet the same. No one uses a device the same. So why create a static environment that's going to try to control it for everybody the same way? It shouldn't be that way. And that's a big value of what we want to focus on and what we offer.
You know, Matt, earlier in the show, we talked about things like malware and phishing and viruses. You know, and that's another area of blocking or controlling access that we want to protect. Are there tools in the Linksys routers that watch for malicious behavior?
So we have a feature that's coming here in the near future that'll actually do anomaly detection, look for those types of intrusions, DNS hacks, those types of aspects that really don't get flagged as your normal network security. And that'll be an expansion of our Linksys Shield feature that will give you that protection.
Matt, aside from the hardware features that you talked about, are there any best practices that you could leave us with to keep ourselves safe and always current?
I think we can spend a whole segment just on this element, but we have a handful that we definitely recommend. I think the first, without a doubt, our number one no-brainer is always use a unique and verifying password, and do not reuse that password. Those are key elements, because a lot of people, it's hard to remember all your passwords and all these complications, so they use the same email and password for everything. And if we like it or not, intrusions happen, and if someone happens to get that information, you just gave them the keys to the castle. So out of the gate, unique passwords across the board is definitely important. And then with that, leveraging an application or some solution to help you manage that.
Matt, thank you so much for being here. You know, where can viewers get the latest information on, of course, what you guys at Linksys are doing today?
Linksys.com. It's definitely the number one stop for us. And then we have a link that we can share around our best practices for security as well.
Thanks, Matt. That is Matthew Kiesler, Senior Product Manager for Linksys. Stephen, so many good things there and so many reasons to just jump out of your seat and go get yourself a brand new Linksys router, especially if you've got little ones at home. But you know what? There's more than just at home, because we want to make sure that we can protect everybody when they're not at home, when they're out of the house. So how do we do that? Well, we'll talk about that after we take a quick break here on Double Tap TV. Stick around. We'll get into that in just a moment.
Love Double Tap TV? Listen to AMI Audio for Double Tap Canada every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern for news and reviews on everything tech. This is Double Tap TV.
We are back on Double Tap TV talking all things internet security. So we've talked about Circle, we've talked about the routers, and of course best practices. But let's talk about the biggest tool in my arsenal, and that is iOS itself. Mark Aflalo and Stephen Scott with you as always. Stephen, we know iOS has a lot of accessibility features that need to be turned on, but have you ever dove into restrictions or screen time?
Well, okay, it's funny you mention that, because screen time for me is something I never go near, because I don't even use the screen on my phone. So I think, does that even count for me? If I'm not even looking at the screen when I'm listening to the audio, I don't know. So I've never gone in there. And as for restrictions, no, because as I keep telling you, and I'm telling you this as a friend to a friend, I don't have kids, so I don't care about restrictions.
You know what? You never know what your dogs are doing, okay? Your dogs can be going behind your back and doing nefarious things.
I don't doubt it. But not with the phones.
Listen,
that's the thing. Not with the phones.
Listen, these features are quite amazing, and this is one of those benefits of having a family setup in iOS, okay? let's open my phone here, and I'm going to go to settings, and I'm going to share the screen so you guys can see exactly what I'm going on here, okay? I'm going to go to settings, and from here we're going to scroll down to screen time. It's kind of in the middle of the screen. And when you go to screen time, this is kind of the ultimate companion for parents, because as you can see in this app, you get things like downtime, for example. And you'll notice here I'm prompted with a password. This is actually a separate screen time password. It's not my phone's password. It's another password that I set up. So I'm going to type this in here to get into downtime. And what downtime does is it's pretty cool. It lets you set downtime for your phone. So we're going to turn on downtime here, and you can see that you can customize it per day, or you can choose it for every single day, and you can say exactly at downtime what to do, and you can block absolutely everything. So this is a great way to kind of just overall decide, okay, I'm going to stop someone from accessing, the entire device when it happens. So let's go back to screen time for a second, and you'll notice towards the bottom, it lists your family members. Here I've got Taylor Aflalo, and I've got Zachary Aflalo, okay? And these are people that are under 18. So you're not going to see my wife on this or anybody else I have on my account because they're not under 18. Now you can still set overall restrictions for everybody, but in this case, I want to get granular and I want to go into a specific child. So let's go to my daughter Taylor, for example. Now the first thing you see on the screen is you've got her daily average of usage on the iPad, which is great. You can hit see all activity about halfway down the screen, and it'll show you in a couple seconds, it'll refresh how much time she spent on the iPad today. Now, actually, today being a weekday when I'm recording this episode, there's no data, so that's fine. But you can go down and also see different apps that she might have used today as well. So we're going to go back, and we're going to show you some other features here. So you've got app limits. When you click on app limits and you turn it on, you have to enter your password one more time. And here you get to see all the apps, and you get actually control limits. Now, these are apps that are on her device. You can see different categories, and you can add limitations like the time of day she can use it or the type of content she has access to. So I'm going to turn app limits off for a second and go back. Now, you can see there's communication limits. Communication limits is pretty cool because you can set, the amount of people that person can communicate with. Can they update their own contacts, or do you want to do that for them? Do you want to allow them access to certain people when their downtime is on? For example, family members. That's a pretty cool feature as well. And then you've got two other features. There's always allowed, which are apps that you always want that person to be able to use. Things like a phone, if it's a phone, messages, FaceTime, Netflix, Disney Plus, etc., which is pretty cool. And then when you go back to screen time, you'll see the last option here is content and privacy restrictions. Now, this is where you can block inappropriate content. You can pick iTunes and App Store purchases, for example, so they can't accidentally make purchases in your account. You could choose apps that are always allowed. You can actually put content restrictions based on ratings, actual ratings based in your country. So if you're in the UK, if you're in Canada, if you're in the US, there's different ratings of different apps, and you can actually control access to that as well. You can even go as deep, Stephen, as allowing them or not allowing them to share their location, change their passwords, make account changes, use cellular data charges, choose their TV provider. Lots of really cool stuff, and you can do this on a per user basis, because if you go back to the main screen time screen, you can then choose your other child or do it across the entire system, which is pretty cool. Now, this is a great tool in the arsenal, especially if you're using iOS devices, if you're using Microsoft stuff, for example, Windows as Windows Family, that has very, very similar tools, and of course, Android has very similar tools as well. Lots of very cool stuff in here, Stephen.
Yeah, and I can totally see why a parent would want that level of access. And I think it's really important you've gone through that, because I don't think that a lot of parents know the detail that is in there. Now, you've mentioned iOS, and the great thing there is that everything you've talked about will be fully accessible with VoiceOver. So if you're a blind parent, you can run through all that as well, and you can make sure that your kids, if your kids are sighted, they can, take the mickey and, get into things that you can't just because you're blind, right? You've got as much access to all these tools as everyone else does, which is fantastic. I just want to ask you a quick question, though. You mentioned apps like Netflix, you've mentioned Disney. Are there other parental controls within the apps that you can tinker with as well to make sure that kids don't see the wrong kind of content?
Definitely. So in Disney Plus, in Netflix, even on YouTube, there are controls that you can go into and customize what level of programming you want that child to have access to. So on Netflix, on Disney Plus, my daughter has a kid's profile, which right there off the bat, when she logs in, shows a more kid-friendly screen. It won't show things that have, gory details, not a lot of violence. I find my daughter actually, logging into my account often to find certain shows that are kind of on the cusp, because you never know. Sometimes they rate things higher than they should because they just want to be safe. But, your child should be okay with it. Like, my daughter watches some Marvel movies. She does not get that on her kid's profile, but she will get that on my profile. So, there are a lot of granular details, and more companies, especially when it comes to streaming media, are working a lot of those into their own apps itself, so you don't have to worry about the overall access to that kind of content.
Amazing. No, that is fantastic, and I think it's great that those options exist.
They exist, and they exist across the board. And as we, started at the beginning of the show with the hardware side of things, then went into obviously the software and the stuff on the routers, and of course then right into the actual iOS itself, which is pretty cool. So do check it out. Go to Screen Time. It's in settings. It's there. You can control all the restrictions. And by the way, this isn't only meant for kids. When my wife was pregnant, I had to block anything WebMD related, anything doctor related, because she would just search and always think the worst. So don't think that you have to just use these for little ones in your house, okay, Stephen?
Okay, well, now you're giving me ideas. I can control my wife's web content searches. This is a whole new world for me.
I made no such recommendations.
I got to go and try this.
Well, you go do that, and on behalf of Stephen Scott, I am Mark Aflalo. Thank you guys for being here. Again, if you want to reach out to us, it's feedback@ami.ca. On Twitter, we are at DoubleTapCanada with that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. And of course, now on Instagram at DoubleTap.online. Thank you guys for being here. We'll chat with you again next week.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. Hosted by Mark Aflalo and Stephen Scott. Editing, Will Latar. Production assistants, Wendy Kaufman. Content review, Zachary Aflalo. Social media, Andy Wynn. Segment producer, Sean Priest. Voiceover, Anna Vicino. Integrated Described Video Specialist, Ron Rickford. Coordinating producer, Jennifer Johnson. Director, Production, Kara Nye. Director Programming, Brian Perdue. VP Content Development and Programming, John Melville. President and CEO, David Arrington. Copyright 2021, Accessible Media, Inc.